My name is Ethan. I work for a company called Fresh Concept. This that we waited for all this time is realistically just a whole lot of glamorous visual material, so not 100% relevant to everything I'm going to say, but just something for you all to look at that isn't me. So I work at Fresh Concept.
Just and please, just like your kindest attention, please, for Ethan. No looking online and doing other things. This is particularly important for event students.
Yeah.
So let's actually welcome Ethan.
So a little background about Fresh Concept. We have been running for about 5 years. I've been involved for just over 3 of those years. Fresh Concept was started right on the cusp of the lead into the Rugby World Cup, when a whole lot of interesting things were happening around Auckland to try and make Auckland more of an attractive destination for the people who were coming in, who came in their tens of thousands. A huge part of the catalyst for us starting was the development at Wynyard Quarter, the area known as Wynyard Quarter, which kind of surrounds Silo Park, which we'll get into. That's up until recently how I would describe to people what I do for a living, because it's creative placemaking is the name of the industry, and that for most people probably means nothing. I would say, oh, do you know Silo Park? And they say yes, and that's kind of what I do. Not entirely, but it's a really good example to pin down, I guess. So essentially we started off as Fresh Concept right around that same time when the Wynyard Quarter development came on, and we were successful in a tender process to program that space and to try and make it more of a destination or an area that connected human beings to one another, which is a huge part of what I'm going to come back to, is that idea of connecting people together. We actually just moved office, so this is relatively irrelevant, but the main purpose of this is to be like, we're kind of all about sustainability, so we ride bikes. That's kind of why this photograph exists, I suppose. We'll come back to it. That's how we describe ourselves now. We've kind of been working on this phrase for a long while. Keen to know what you think, but essentially we're a creative, energetic group of people that make events, spaces and ideas meaningful and awesome. And I understand that a lot of the people in this room, I don't know what portion of you are interested in events. Yeah, put your hands up, go on. Yeah, cool. Sweet. So I want to talk to placemaking as a concept and how that uses a lot of the skills and knowledge that you'll all be getting hold of within your degree, but also how you need to find a way to apply what you learn, so not necessarily just going out and working in the events industry or in the PR world or in comms or in those things, because I understand you all graduate pretty soon and you'll probably be looking for work really soon, and in that case, if you have it in your mind that I'm going to go and I studied events, I'm going to be an events manager, then you might find yourself struggling for a little while. It's about kind of...
We're first year students.
Your first year students? Oh, perfect. Okay, cool. That's cool. So when you work out what you want to do in a couple of years' time... Oh, sweet. Thank you for that, by the way. And feel free to jump in. I'll get stuff wrong all the time. It's fine. So this is Fresh Concept. I think it's stretched just a bit. But I'm blue. Awesome. So we'll ignore that fact. Left to right, I'll just kind of run through the backgrounds, and it kind of is relevant to what I was just saying, but Simon Van Praag is on the far left in the check shirt. He's our director. He comes from the world of running bars and hospitality and restaurants, and he, from age 18, has owned and operated bars in Wellington and all around the place. Well, starting in Wellington and then moving around, but through his interests in bars, which is kind of connecting people just for a slightly different reason, through his interest in that, he really got that interest in the way people come together, but also what they bring with them. So anytime you're engaging with somebody, be they somebody you know or otherwise, everything that you do is informed by your background, be that your experiences, your culture, your family, whatever it may be. Those things come together, and he's all about kind of working out how to program things for that. If any of this doesn't make sense, just shoot a hand up and be like, elaborate or explain or something. Jessie comes from the world of hospitality, so she's worked in restaurants as well, but predominantly in hotels, so she's all about connecting people with cool things to do. Me in the middle, I studied a Bachelor of Communication Studies majoring in Public Relations at AUT University. They're not paying me to say it. And that was an interesting situation for me. I never believed in the idea of going to university in the first place. I figured that I could do it all for myself because I was, I don't know, better than anyone else. But essentially, I grew up in Hawke's Bay. I moved up to Auckland with the intention of just finding something better to do that wasn't uni. Stuck it out all the way through uni. Originally planned to major because the AUT degree has like 10 majors or something, I don't know, in comms. But I originally wanted to do radio, but then I ended up working. From the start of second year, I got a job presenting the breakfast show on 95BFM. So every morning from 5 AM I was at work, and it kind of seemed silly to be learning all of this stuff on the job and then going to uni and learning all of that stuff in the books. Again, I kind of brought that experience of feeling as if I didn't need the paperwork into the active pursuing the paperwork, which is proved by the third year, proved kind of oxymoronic. But the fact that I was working in radio meant that I wanted to major something else, use that time that I had to learn something different. So I went and majored in public relations, and then within the first semester of the third year, which is the major year, I realised how public relations wasn't necessarily for me, and that wasn't to say that it was the content, but unfortunately it was the people that I encountered in public relations. And this is why I'm really stoked to be a part of Fresh Concept, is because I found a way to, although I learned all these things in PR and I lived in the PR world for a year, which is a very insular bubble at AUT, like it's really just this is PR. What I learnt was that I didn't want to connect people in the way that public relations did, in that sense of brands and like, essentially I didn't want to talk about something and make them money. I wanted to connect people and not necessarily worry about making money. And so by the end of my third year, I'd studied a whole lot of weird papers in trying to find other things, including event management papers, digital audio production, animation, which is awesome if you're interested. Animation's a cool thing to just pick up. If that's a minor or a selective paper, do it. It's hard, but it's fun. Anyway, so that's me. I didn't like the world I was in, and I moved up. Mark comes from the arts world, so he was living in Berlin and briefly in Istanbul, putting together community art galleries and art spaces and co-working spaces, and really just bringing people together using arts as the tool. And Ezra here is our designer, and he's all about illustration and recreating a human element in design. So instead of like, I don't know if anyone's paying attention to this flag conversation at the moment, but the cool thing about the flag conversation, as much as everybody would have their own opinion of it, what's great is that we're all talking about design, which is kind of cool, and how design is going to impact us all as individuals and as a collection. And part of that conversation you will have encountered talking about the way it speaks to people. Well, essentially geometric shapes with sliced up colours look great, but don't necessarily speak on a human level. They suggest bigger ideas, whereas our whole thing with Ezra, and why Ezra's amazing, is that he makes everything look like it was made by a human, which means everything is relatable, hopefully, to a human, depending on who that is. Now, with that said, this is just some, we haven't updated this in a while, this is just some of our team. We've got a few others. We've got somebody who works around the communication side of things, so essentially our PR rep, if you will. We've got, so she comes from the communications, music, events kind of background as well. Then we have Adele, who studied psychology, worked in law, went on to produce a whole lot of work for NGOs, worked in human rights and refugee status and all of these amazing projects, huge focus on human beings, and now she's with us, which is awesome. We're really, really privileged to have her. She was supposed to come and present with me today, but unfortunately she's unable to make it, and she apologises for that fact. But she should be on here as well, and again, just completely different background. And we also have a woman called Nikki, who comes from the fashion world, who is our sponsorship and partnership manager. Meaning, yes, money does get involved, because money is required, it's a resource, right? But we'll see, I'll show you a little bit, but some of the projects that we've worked on, you don't necessarily see that money up front, which is the point. The way I actually wrote this down because I thought it was important to say it right. We are focused on the outcomes for humans, not the outcomes for brands. So I will not sit in the office and work hard on strategy or delivery for like a corporate entity that wants to do a brand activation or something. That's not who we are. So as a result, we predominantly work for public money. So councils, property developers in the public sector, business associations, groups like that who have an interest in space as opposed to in brand. I didn't really structure this very well, but hopefully it's all still making sense. So this is just part of the team. The big thing and the way that we work differently at Fresh Concept is that we have an enormous community that we draw upon. So instead of just always working with these 5 people, as much as we do work with these 5 people all the time, and a couple of others who I mentioned, we have an enormous network that we draw upon for anything, be it delivery of something, design, construction, and all of those sort of nuts and bolts, wearing high-vis and hard hats kind of story, all the way down to strategic consultancy and people from different cultural groups and community groups, and the whole point is that everything we do we try and tailor to a community. So some project we've worked on, here you go, this is what I was saying, glamorous visual content. This is Silo Park. I don't know if you know Silo Park, it's kind of the best place to go. So our role at Silo Park from its inception as a community space has been to program and deliver a summer program of events and activation. That word activation you'll hear quite a lot. It's often used nowadays in the brands kind of capacity where you have a brand activation. Essentially activation for us is taking a space that isn't otherwise used and activating it. So it's not that elusive a concept, hopefully. But at Silo Park we have Silo Cinema, which is free outdoor movies, which is this screen here, which I think that night we were playing Home Alone. We were advertising Home Alone. Yeah. Silo Markets, which is up here, and all the food trucks and that. So that's Friday nights, Saturday afternoons, and Sunday afternoons. We also do something called Silo Social, which is a free dance class on a Sunday afternoon in the park, which is pretty cool. And Silo Sessions, which is once a month free concerts on a Saturday afternoon, which usually hangs out where this yellow tent is here. And we have a lot of artists from around the world and all sorts of things. Silo Park has benefited immensely from the foresight and the vision of a group that were called Waterfront Auckland and are now called Panuku Development Auckland. The idea is that they see this space as the way to get people down and interested in the waterfront before the residential side comes on. So they are building houses and not houses, they're building apartments in Wynyard Quarter. It's the whole purpose for Wynyard Quarters being down there. It's an urban regeneration project. So people will live there. So in doing this, we prove to people that it's an interesting place to live, it's an interesting place to be, and this doesn't last forever. Like the Silo Park programming will taper off. And it comes down to this principle in Fresh Concept where we say we always want to work ourselves out of a job. If the community that we are programming for can take over what we're doing, that's the perfect outcome. It's like, I want there to be no reason for me to work anymore, which is a really terrifying concept, but it's critical. Smells Farm is a business park, privately owned business park in the North Shore. I work predominantly in the social media realm, so while you are all told to leave your computers as they be, I'm not going to turn my phone off, and I apologise for that now. Smells Farm is it's a business park with these 3 enormous buildings filled with workers. They've got 2,500 workers in one place, enormous green space, huge amount of car parking space. I hate cars, by the way. I love cars as a product. I mean, I'm a big fan of the automotive industry. I just hate cars taking up space away from humans. So streets, car parks, massive parking buildings that just sit there empty from all night, it seems completely pointless. And it's since the 1950s we've completely ruined cities by making space for cars. So we did a drive-in movie. We encouraged a whole lot of cars in one spot. That's just the only photo at this stage that we used. But we've taken this space at Smells Farm, which was previously you go through there anytime during work hours and it feels quite still. I wouldn't say dead, but just still and quite quiet, and that's because they have these enormous buildings full of workers who are at their desks. And so we have taken on this project in trying to make it feel human, for want of a better phrase. Just to try and give people a reason to hang out as opposed to just